Our presenters today are Andrea Kingston and Ghidiu from Monroe Community College, and they're going to be telling you about how to support student parents in the library. So I have 2 o'clock, I guess whenever you're ready.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrea Kingston. I'm the Digital Initiatives and Special Projects Librarian at Monroe Community College.
And hi everyone, I'm Ghidiu. I'm the Director of Library Services at Monroe Community College. And thank you so much for joining us today and wanting to discuss and learn about supporting student parents in the library. And we've purposefully made our presentation a little on the shorter side, so there'll be some time for an interactive portion and also plenty of time for Q&A. So I'm going to start out by sharing some information about student parents. And there's quite a bit of research out there nationally about showing that student parents make up about 1 in 5 college students overall. A lot of these student parents go to community colleges, but also they tend to go to some for-profit institutions. Student parents are more likely to be students of color, are often older than non-parents, and are likely to have children preschool age or younger. I also thought it was interesting to find out that student parents often have double the student loan debt of non-parents. And so at MCC, our institutional research office has been really diving in and looking at information on student parents. And Andrea is going to talk a little bit more about that later, but I'm going to share some of the data that our IR office shared with us. And so MCC has a little under 10,000 students, or FTE. And we know that over 22% of them are student parents. Of the 22%, about 2/3 of them are single parents. And we know that for all student parents, they're less likely to graduate on time despite having higher first semester GPAs. And MCC is really focusing in on single mom, or what they call single mom learners. And they make up 55% of our student parents. And we know that the graduation rate for these single mom learners at MCC is 8%. And that over 90% of them live in poverty. And so what we really wanted to focus in on is, what do student parents think, how do they feel about being student parents on a college campus, and especially what are their perceptions of academic libraries? There's some really great work on this being done at the University of Memphis, where they talked to student parents and really found out what they were feeling and what their perceptions are. And so many reported feeling stigma around being a student parent and maybe not wanting to disclose to faculty members or staff on campus that they were parents. Some campuses even have restrictive policies that prevent students on campus or in the library, which is the opposite of being welcoming to student parents. Students reported feeling that the libraries felt off limits, or that they couldn't imagine that children would be welcome. And I think oftentimes that ties back to the idea of a traditional academic library as a space that's pristine and quiet and full of students studying by themselves, which we know is maybe not what our campuses are like right now. Student parents requested designated spaces where children and noise are welcomed. And I thought it was interesting to find out that student parents are often unaware of library services that would support them. So things like chat reference, so that they could get help from home and not have to come to campus and get help in the library. Or things like video supports or tutorials or LibGuides, so that they could get the support they need when they need it, whether it be in the middle of the night or from somewhere that's off campus. And go ahead. Thanks, Andrea. And then I wanted to finish up by sharing some strengths that our student parents bring to the college. And so we know that the research shows that student parents have higher GPAs than students that are not parents. And that's true both in the national data and research and what they found at MCC. We know that student parents are dedicated, focused, and motivated students. Oftentimes, student parents have a very specific idea of why they're in college and what they want to achieve. And so that lends to them being such focused and motivated students. Research shows that student parents have to make decisions between childcare, studying, and self-care, and often spend much higher numbers of hours on things like housework, transporting children, cleaning, things that non-parents often don't think about, and our students who are not parents don't have to factor into their lives. And student parents are also more likely than non-parents to work. And so I think what we see is student parents are have all the necessary skills and tools and motivations to be incredibly successful, but are often trying to balance so many different things that when something goes wrong, they don't have that safety net that other students have that enables them to complete their work or stay in school. So for example, if a student parent doesn't have childcare, it falls through for the day, or their child gets sick and they have to decide between coming to class or staying home and taking care of their kid, that's not really a decision that they can make, right? They have to stay home and take care of their kid. And so we found that student parents are often having to make those decisions, and that has an impact on their ability to complete their studies. So I will turn it over to Andrea now.
So considering all those factors, we tried to figure out how we can better support students at MCC, given that almost 20% of our students are parents. So overall on the campus, we have some campus initiatives that are relevant to student parents. We've noticed in the last maybe year to 2 years, administration has been focusing a lot more on the needs of student parents. We already had a child care center at our main campus that is fee-based and accepts children of students and faculty. That child care center has a waiting list and again has some pretty significant fees associated. But administration did start a new cost-free drop-in child care center at our downtown campus, which is our smaller campus of the two, this spring. And unfortunately, it was only up and running a little while before the facilities closed due to the pandemic. But it is a drop-in and can take up to, I think it's about 12 kids at once. It's not huge, but it hopefully will make a bit of a difference. We have a campus-wide resource committee that deals with student non-academic needs, and they now have a subcommittee on student parents. And as a result, recently there was a facilitated single parent student group formed so student parents can get to know each other and to support each other. And that, due to the pandemic, it meets online once a week. And they talk about anything from just being student parents and what the challenges are to various resources on campus that can support their needs. The campus also has a couple of grant-funded projects in the works. We recently were awarded a grant from the Education Design Lab Single Moms Success Design Challenge. And that grant seeks to answer whether community colleges can improve single moms completion rates by taking intentional steps to address their needs. And part of the grant is that the folks who are running the grant will be working very closely with various experts from the Education Design Lab to test and get into the field right away some potential solutions. So it's not just money, it's actual expertise being provided as well. We're also a finalist for what's called the RISE Prize, which looks to increase student parents' post-secondary success. That includes both traditional degrees and things like certificate programs. And as far as the library goes, we've taken some specific steps for our student parents. We've installed family-friendly study rooms, one in each of our 2 libraries. We created kid kits, which are, I'm going to describe them later, but they're small kits with educational toys that kids can use in the library. We've made sure that we have student parent friendly policies and procedures in place and that those are available on our website. And we've put in a request for changing tables to be added to both our male and female restrooms. And again, that is a moot point right now, but the request is pending with facilities. So our family-friendly study rooms include kid and adult size furniture, computers, whiteboards, coloring supplies, and children's books, and have sort of a family-friendly decor. Here are some photos. These are taken while the rooms were sort of in process. They're a little bit more decorated at this point with posters and toys and things like that, but this is the basic appearance of the two rooms that we have so far. And you'll see they're very colorful, whereas most of our study rooms are just, if you take away all the color in each of these images, that's more what our study rooms tend to look like. And you'll notice that there is both the kid-size furniture and the adult-size furniture suitable for studying either with a computer or without. This room on the right here also has a small love seat in there. So when I took on creating the family-friendly study rooms, some of the issues that we tackled were funding, of course. We were fortunate in that we did not have to take the funds out of our regular library budget. We had a couple of special allocations. We were able to use some funding from a donation that had been sitting in the account for quite a while, and then some grant funding. So we used that for the materials. The biggest expense was the furniture. Also, space considerations. We happen to have a study room open up on our main campus, have been used as an office and then as our makerspace, sort of a makeshift makerspace. And when we were retooling that, we figured we could use that space as a family-friendly study room. And then on our downtown campus, the space was used in our learning commons, and that study room was actually organized by our student services department rather than the library. Policies and procedures needed to be put in place. And I did that mainly by consulting policies and procedures on similar type family-friendly study rooms from other colleges from what I could find online. Staff buy-in was important, especially among access services. They're the folks who are interfacing with the students who are using the room and having to enforce various policies. So ran everything by them. And then getting the word out to the campus community was a bit more challenging than I expected. So some of the lessons learned, try to put yourself in the student's shoes when you're putting a room like this together. Try and imagine yourself studying in that room with a child and try and figure out what's needed and talk to actual students if you can. Don't forget about childproofing. That ended up being a little bit last minute, things like plug protectors and ensuring that you don't order furniture that might topple over on a little kid, that kind of thing. Just think about that. It took more time than I expected, both the actual my time devoted to all the little details and also getting everything through the various sort of glacial paced college procedures like ordering furniture from approved buyers and approved vendors and that sort of thing. And then lots of little details emerge in the process that you may not expect. Everything from, changing packaging to make sure it can hold up while being used in the room, to hanging posters. I mean, it's all these little details. And then I also learned that too many cooks can complicate the broth. We did have multiple departments involved, where everything from using the grant funding to ordering furniture to having one department install a family-friendly study room in one campus and one department do it in another campus. So if you can kind of streamline the team that's working on it, that's what I would recommend. And then as far as our kid kits go, they provide educational toys and games, and they're sorted by age. And we have decided they can be used anywhere in the library, so either in the family-friendly study room or anywhere else. So the student parent, maybe the family-friendly study room is booked already, they could use another study room, and the kids could use the toys in the backpack to keep themselves occupied. So that's what they look like. We got all different color kid-sized backpacks, all the same style. And there are about 3 toys in each kid kit. There's sorted by color, and then they also have tags with a barcode and a kit number on them to keep them straight. And we have a menu for the kid kits. The image on the left, I know you can probably not read it, but it's a menu of all the different kid kits that a student parent or their child could peruse to select a kid kit. And then the image on the right is the menu that's inserted in the kid kit that tells the user what to expect, what the toys are that are included, how many pieces those toys have, and asking them to please put everything back in the backpack before they return it. There's also a little reminder that they're just for in-library use only. We don't have any kind of security strips on these things, so we're just counting on folks to keep them in the library. So when it came to creating the kid kits, the idea was to focus on educational toys and games that can occupy kids for a significant amount of time, so not something that would just take them 15 minutes and then they get bored. So I tended towards things like construction kits or some kind of puzzle that would take a while. And they are divided out by age range from toddler to tween. So some of the lessons learned when putting these together, I recommend avoiding noisy toys. We did end up with a couple of toys that make noise, and I anticipate we'll end up having to replace those. It's just not conducive to the whole project. And I did not remember to think about the size of things when I was ordering them. I only had a couple failures in this area, but some things were bigger than I expected. For example, a box of plastic dinosaurs, I did not realize it was going to be almost as big as the backpack. And some toys have lots of small loose parts, especially those Lego kits and the building kits. I did end up needing to adjust the packaging before putting them in the backpacks, using things like Ziploc bags, things that can be reused to keep things organized and clean. And speaking of clean, also have a plan for keeping the toys sterilized and clean and at least somewhat organized. I think we're counting on probably some of those little parts going missing over time, and we've kind of budgeted for that. But it's nice to kind of be able to at least anticipate some of those issues. And when it came to creating our policies and procedures for the family-friendly study rooms and the kid kits, again, I looked at other colleges' policies. There's some great ones. If you just Google family-friendly study room and LibGuide, you'll come up with quite a few. And after putting together a draft based on what I saw and sort of merging them with our existing study room guidelines, I met with Access Services staff to make sure that what we were putting together was acceptable to them, that they'd be willing to enforce the various policies. And the main points about the policies are that they clearly state that children are welcome in the libraries. And it also warns that those children must be supervised at all times. We, just for various issues, for children's safety, for our liability, for everyone concerned, it's important to stress that this is not a place where you can drop your children off and then go somewhere else. You need to be with them. And Katie, were you going to put that in the chat, the URL? Created a LibGuide about our services for student parents, and that's the URL right there that Katie will put in the chat. So feel free to take a look and borrow any information on there that you'd like to reuse. That's totally fine. And Katie?
Yep. So as Andrea shared, we were already planning on implementing some family-friendly study spaces in the library prior to receiving the grant that I'm going to talk about next. But I do think it was helpful and gave us some important information, and it might be useful for other people who are thinking of implementing family-friendly spaces. So in 2017, we were one of 7 colleges that partnered with Ithaca SNR, and we applied for and received an IMLS grant. And the name is super long, but it's the Community College Libraries and Academic Support for Student Success Project, or the CLASS project. And so the idea was to interview current students at all 7 institutions and find out what motivates them, what are their goals, what are challenges that they're facing in being able to complete those goals while at our institutions. And so we took the results from those interviews and came up with 8 service concepts or different ideas that the colleges could implement to try and address those challenges or to better support students. And so these service concepts, I have one example here, the one that has to do with childcare on the screen. But all of them were, they were concepts that a library could implement or a campus could implement, and depending on the institution. So for example, the childcare one, it says, imagine that there were an array of services at the college to accommodate students who have children of their own or are caregivers while you are attending class. These services might include designated spaces for families to study together, both regular and emergency childcare programs, and tutoring and other after-school services for children. And so for us, some of that we would want to implement in our library, and some parts of it were things that were beyond kind of what the library could take on, but it was something that maybe the college could. So these service concepts were packaged together into a survey that went out to all of the students at all of the institutions. And so at MCC, we had about a 19% survey completion rate, which was great. And so students received a survey, and they had a couple of the service concepts randomly assigned to them that they could respond to, and whether they thought it was valuable, extremely valuable, to not at all valuable. And they could mark which parts of it they thought were valuable, and also where on campus they would want to see it implemented. And so, for example, for the childcare, about 544 students received this service concept. And of that, over 70% said that they would find a designated space for families to study, either somewhat, very, or extremely valuable. And so we got this data for all of the different service concepts that we surveyed students on. And so you can see, like, all of these, for all of them on the screen, students found it pretty valuable. And we also found that the library was a popular place where students wanted to see a lot of these services. And so for us, this backed up, our plan to designate a portion of our space for families. But maybe if you're on a campus where it's a harder sell, that having data like this could help. And so at the end of this grant, Ithaca S&R put together a toolkit that has all of the survey tools so that anyone can implement it on their campus, and it's freely available and licensed openly. So if that's something you're interested in, that's available to you.
So originally we'd planned to have a group discussion at SUNYLA about this topic because we really wanted to hear what other libraries are doing or what other libraries would like to do. But given the format of a Zoom webinar, what we'd like to do is take you over briefly to Padlet and do some brainstorming and discussion on Padlet. So please think about these two questions, and then Katie's going to put the link in the chat to this Padlet. What are you or your library doing to support your student parents? And how can we improve our support for our student parents? And if you have a Padlet account, you can log in, but otherwise you should be able to just click on the link and join the discussion. We put the two questions here on Padlet. To add a comment, you can either click on the plus sign in the lower right corner, or you can just double click on the screen. And once you've added a comment, you can click on the three dots above it when you hover over it to link it to one of the two questions here, or to link it to someone else's comment. You can also click on someone's comment to like it, or to comment directly on their comment, if that makes sense. Oh, okay, interesting. Oh, getting rid of overdue fines for children's books. I like that. Okay, children's reading area. Oh, that's cool. Because, yeah, a lot of us as academic libraries have a children's book section, but do we make that area child friendly? So this college has Kid Kits as well. Yeah, and was derailed by COVID as well. Yeah, that's not fun. Revisiting your policy of no children in your testing center. Yes, childcare is still important. I wish we could do more in the library physically, but we just don't have a good space for that. But I'm glad that the campus more generally has been addressing that. Low seating and bright rugs, yeah. I have to say, this was the most fun I've ever had choosing library furniture. Nice purple love seat with a bright color on it, and then the bright colored rug. Katie, feel free to weigh in if you want.
Sure. I was going to say, if you scroll down, there's another comment.
Oh, okay, great.
So we love your idea and are trying to do something similar. We applied for a grant to repurpose a space just before we were sent home to work. We'll see what happens next. We want to have it adjacent to the tutoring center.
Oh, very cool.
I think that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, imagine being a parent and being able to take your kid to your tutoring session, and that's just so helpful. So group study rooms for parents. Now, the question of not being able to dedicate one to student parents, what we did was we said that student parents have priority in the rooms, but if the rooms aren't being used, they can be checked out by regular students. I think because of the decor, we haven't had a lot of regular students asking for the room, even though it actually has more comfortable furniture and computers right in the room. But for some reason, I think the decor puts them off.
I like someone wondered about having emergency supplies available, like diapers, wipes, etc. That's something we haven't thought about.
Yeah. Wow, someone's entire campus has a no children policy. That's, yeah, you're right. That's problematic and probably not realistic, given that on any given campus, it's something around just under 20% of the students are likely to be parents. Oh, someone else is planning to add a family-friendly study room. That's great.
Oh, I see someone has their campus has a no child policy during COVID. That's interesting because we've been closed the whole time. So I don't know what our campus hasn't said if they're going to implement something like that when we start coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll impact not just our students, but some of our faculty and staff too, if childcare isn't fully open in the fall or summer and fall as well. At one campus, their librarians read books to their to kids in our daycare center for story hour once a month.
Oh, that's cool.
That's awesome.
Oh, I wonder if we could do that. Publicize your children's books. Yeah, I think a large number of us probably have children's books collections, and I don't think they're heavily utilized, at least at our library. So it'd be great to publicize those a bit more. So I'm curious what other folks, any other comments about what we can do to improve our support? There are some great ideas here. I'm wondering if anyone has any more. Like, what would be your dream, other than a childcare center, which is really hard, a big ask? I think some of the large universities have them. I was reading an article where there were 2 really large universities that have on-campus childcare, just like drop-in childcare, but there are so many reasons that it doesn't tend to be conducive to some of our campuses. Study groups for student parents, I love that. You know what I was just thinking about is some kind of study night where it's like bring your kid, and then having like activities for the kids, and then the student parents could study. So a strong no child vibe on campus. I think it really sometimes is, even the strong no child vibe, sometimes it's not 100% intentional. I think it's just that administrators in particular tend to overlook that the student parents, you know, there's no dividing that out. They're parents first, right? So having a non-child friendly campus is not conducive to keeping them there. Yeah, I'm gonna click like on that study group idea. I really like that.
Yeah, I remember when we were talking to Marianne DeMario, who's our the person in our institutional research department who's really focusing on this. She said one of the biggest supports for student parents is having a peer group on campus, because not just being able to share like common challenges that they're facing, but oftentimes they'll find like they might share childcare, or they might take care, you know, be able to like swap times, and that building those bonds can have a huge benefit for student parents.
I think it really addresses what some student parents feel is a stigma as well. You know, anything we can do to make sure that they feel welcome on campus and acknowledged and recognized, and that they're able to connect with each other. These are some awesome ideas. And this is, if you save the URL, you can go back to this Padlet if you want to consult it again. I won't be erasing it or anything. I wonder if we should go over to the Q&A now. Katie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. So we have a couple of questions in the Q&A, and I also see one in the chat. So I'll start with the Q&A, and then we can move over if need be.
Okay.
So the first question is, how does MCC identify student parents in their population? I can answer that if. Okay. So all MCC students take an intake survey when they register at MCC for the first time, and one of the questions is whether they are a student parent. And so it's all by students self-identifying. And the definition is whether they have a child under the age of 18. And then our next question is, Andrea, maybe you could take this one. Mm-hmm. How many study rooms do you have total? Do you allow non-parents to use them if no families are present?
So we have one on each campus. In our main library, on our main campus, overall we have approximately, 24 study rooms? I believe, somewhere around there. And we've designated, for at least for the time being, one as the family-friendly study room with the fancy decor and everything. And the policy is that student parents have priority, but that non-parent students can use the room if it's available, with the caveat that they might be asked to move to another study room if a student parent requests the room. We have not had that situation yet, but again, they were only up and running for a couple months before we had to close. So over time, it was a conundrum because either you tell a student parent, no, you can't use the room even though there are no parents in there, or you ask the non-parents to move. And that's only if another study room is available. So we went with the second route. Neither situation is ideal, but so far neither situation has come up as well. I think that answered it's a two-part question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it did. And then a question in the chat. Does your campus have an early childhood program? Oh, I think it was another idea. If your campus has an early childhood program, have them coordinate study night for parents.
That's a nice idea as well. Yeah.
We do not, but that is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
So then another question came in. Do you make space/room allowance for dependent children of students that may be disabled and possibly over 18?
One thing we decided was we would not question the age of the child. So if a student parent arrived and the person with them seemed like an adult, that was fine. We're not going to question that. So there really is no age limit. The kid kits are suited more for toddlers to tweens, but that doesn't mean we don't allow older kids in the rooms. And then as far as disabilities go, we did make sure that the rooms were ADA compliant, but I don't think we have any special equipment in there that would accommodate someone. Well, we do have, adjustable desk height, but other than that.
Yeah, I know it came up too when we were talking about our restrooms in the library. So on our main campus, in the larger of our two library spaces, we have restrooms within the library, and they're all there's no single use bathrooms, and so I know that can be an issue for parents that have adult children with special needs that may need to provide help. And so it's something that we've brought up, but until they kind of renovate our building, we won't be able to address that need. So Erin said, thanks. I think for the first question, the answer was helpful. In assessing needs, our biggest problem is that we have no one on campus collecting data to identify student parents.
Yeah, I don't think that's very common on campuses to collect that data. So maybe that's something you'd want to suggest to the powers that be, if that's within your purview.
I have one attendee who raised their hand. I'm going to try to click to allow them to talk.
Okay.
Jeremy, did you want to talk?
Maybe not.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Oh, sorry, in the chat. So I think we have a few more minutes. If anyone has more questions, feel free to put them in. But I also wanted to share that Andrea put together a list of suggested reading. So if you want to learn more about data that's out there about student parents in college, or about how libraries are meeting the needs of student parents, there's a pretty comprehensive list at this link. I can drop it in the chat in just a minute, and we'll make the slides available after.
So thanks so much for coming and attending this session. We're always happy to talk with you if you're working through your ideas on accommodating student parents, or if you're in the process of setting up a family-friendly study room. I'm happy to talk with you about all the little nitty-gritty details. And then feel free to use the kit idea, and if you want any advice on that as well, I'm happy to talk with you about it. So thanks so much. I guess we'll stick around in case there's anyone else has a question.
Okay, thank you, Andrea and Katie.
I'll take a look at it, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, it should be all lowercase. I put the wrong one in the slide. It should be lowercase.
That one should work. Okay. Thanks, Heather, for checking it out.
And I'll fix the slides before we give them to the conference folks. No more questions, I guess. Okay. I'll fix that now, I guess. Oh, whoops, there was one more chat.
Yep. Have you seen regular usage? So we finished our study rooms at the beginning of February. So we unfortunately have not had much time to test them out. I think they both saw some usage, but it wasn't like booked all day, every day, but they were only open for about a month and a half before everything shut down.
Well, Andrea and Katie, thank you very much.